So this piece you see here is the final result of a project that Jen and I began collaborating on this past fall of 2014. I serve as an AmeriCorps Vista member, resident organizer with the Vermont Affordable Housing Coalition, and Jen and I are both community artists and activists. And for this project, we sought to go out into the community and interview folks living in affordable housing to gather their input around what the importance of home, specifically to include their voices in a city, not citywide, a South End community planning process. I'm sure you've heard the Plan BTV South End has been all over the news. So we went out and we did a series of, we went and gathered input from folks a number of different ways. We sent around 200 surveys out to folks living in the South End of town. We held community forums and then eventually did a series of one-on-one meetings to really get at the core of what are the pieces of this community, the tangible things that really make this a livable place to be, both in terms of affordability, in terms of community offerings. And so we met with folks in affordable housing, many of whom are new Americans, many of whom come from different backgrounds and ability levels, to make sure that sometimes the voices that aren't heard in these projects are the most important and need to be heard. So we went about speaking to them, and these were samples of some of the surveys that we handed out to get their ideas and to sort of synthesize through a visual product at the end what were these main ideas that we wanted to represent to the community. And we think that it was so important to get their input. We went about turning all of this eventually into kind of synthesized it down into a series of sketches and took some of the main ideas that came up and pieced them out into the composition. And further on into the process, we then went back to the communities that we originally interviewed to make sure that we were representing them the way that they wanted to be represented, and to really translate these ideas the best way we could into their final form. This is one of the 3 final sketches that initial sketches that we did that we brought to the community. These pieces dealt with everything from green space to the importance of public space, transportation issues, housing issues. It really covered a wide swath of ideas, and it was a very open-ended survey process. A lot of times in urban planning, you're kind of presented with a series of ideas and asked, what do you think about these things? And we tried to, especially through the one-on-one interviews, get folks to drive us to where they wanted to be heard, especially around issues of diversity and accessibility. We found that those were really an important method for gathering this information. And so once we gathered all of this and we got the okay to move ahead, we went and turned these initial sketches into a painting, and we went back to the community that we originally interviewed to help to get their help in painting the final piece.
Can we take over?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There we go. I'm gonna use my notes too, just to make sure I don't forget. So as you can see here, this mural is a transportable 6x8 mural canvas. It's kind of the beginning sketches here, and everything down to the composition was really determined by the content of the conversations and the interviews that we did. For kind of the main areas that came out, things that people really focused on, there was a lot more similarity in what people wanted from very diverse backgrounds than expected. This is a friend of ours painting. And so the ideas of really being able to utilize public space in the waterfront and the bike path and have access to good food and gardens and develop community gardens, to have visual representation of the multiple ethnicities and diversity of people who live in the South End kind of came up. So you see some of the representation here, just like 4 different parts in there. And then other things that came up too were the ideas of having community kitchen, community cooking classes, art classes by and for people who live in the South End and artists who work down there, having an art market for to sell things from those classes, childcare co-op, having access to a computer center for not everybody has the ability to get up to downtown to go to the library to check their email or web to use the internet. So that kind of stemmed the idea of having a community center that could house most, if not all, of those kind of needs that people were addressing since the beginning, to the early stages of painting here. The other thing, by and large, that came up was the issue of transportation and safety. Walking, biking, There's a lot of folks who are using wheelchairs and walkers to get around. The sidewalks are often inaccessible and unable to get through. The bike lanes are hard to get through and unsafe. So the idea of having a multi-lane transportation lane here, having buffered bike lanes, having safe crosswalks in the South End. So all of these different items kind of determine the composition that we were working on, which like the community gardens, having a little park hut that people can go and sit together. We're going to see the community center, you'll start seeing different aspects of that being represented. And so all of this was put together with the idea of having the ideas of the folks that we talked to being represented in the South End Summit early in February that planning BTV folks were putting together. And so these are all different, I guess, simplification of all the ideas that people came up with. Down here, there's you can see a bus stop right there that is heated in the wintertime and is powered by solar power. Access to the waterfront over here, and reusing buildings, rooftop gardens, underground parking. So these are coming from residents who live in the area and think about these things because their interest is the quality of life. What else do I want to address? Oh, and then the other thing on Pine Street is the idea of traffic, a lot of traffic down there. And so if there was a trolley or a shuttle that could go up and down Pine Street, that could curtail traffic, that could drop you off in different places along Pine Street, where you wanted to go. You could put your bike on there, leave your car at either end of Pine Street, and get out and reduce traffic and increase safety. Specific detail of the rooftop garden. So this is the first of many projects that Michelle and I are working on. We're starting the Center for Productive Kvetching, and we have continued on to do some performance work, and we'll be continuing to working with some folks in South End and continue doing similar projects. And this is the final product. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.